Okay, so now what happens, although Delta has stated repeatedly that they do not have the intention of terminating the plan, and they have to go to get ALPA's approval. As long as there are assets in the trust, I don't think that there's any incentive to terminate the plan, because as with most ERISA plans, if the plan gets terminated, Delta doesn't get the money back. Okay, Delta can't get the $1.6 billion back. The money has to be reserved to pay benefits to participants. So if the plan was fully funded and Delta went away, and the plan got terminated, guess what? The benefits would still be there because the trust was there. If the trust gets depleted through the years, through this $60 million, or maybe some future claims, adding a bunch of new pilots on the list, and it runs out of money, what happens then if Delta goes to ALPA and says, we want to terminate this plan? And they said, do you want us to spend the money on these old retirees, or do you want us to spend the money on benefits for you? And I'm hoping that ALPA will take the high moral ground and say, no, that was there, that's what we need to do. But remember, ALPA has also stated in recent bankruptcies, they do not represent retired pilots, which I think is a flaw. My opinion is that maybe a flaw in the laws that allows it. So the danger would be that the DNS trust runs out of money, Delta says, I want to terminate it, and ALPA agrees. And at that point in time, any benefits, any survivor benefits, any continuing disability benefits would simply disappear. Yes, Bob?
Just a pretty simple question. I thought the ERISA laws in this country were supposed to keep Delta and ALPA from doing this sort of thing. Why don't they apply, and is it because bankruptcy law trumps ERISA law?
Actually, bankruptcy laws do trump ERISA laws in my layman's understanding of the issue. However, there's some things that happen that probably need to be revisited. And this is one of the reasons I'm so happy that Valerie Walker has agreed to step forward and run a political action committee, because if we look at some of the bankruptcies, that first of all, let's take the first United Airlines bankruptcy, in which ALPA agreed to terminate the pilot pension plan, and ALPA was given $550 million of notes as a reward that went to the active pilots, not the retired pilots. Well, in the middle of the 1113 process, the United retired group of pilots raised their hand and said, hey, we belong in 1113. The bankruptcy court said, no, this your agreement, ALPA doesn't represent you, so you're not under a collectively bargained agreement now. No, you don't belong in this court. So they appealed it, and they lost the first appeal. Finally, I think it was the second appeal level where the appellate court came back and said, you know, they should have been represented. ALPA didn't represent them. They were their benefits, and they were tied back to a collectively bargained agreement when they were employed, so they should have had representation. However, at this point, the plan's been terminated, and we don't see any practical way of correcting the issue. So then the United pilots took it on forward to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court refused to hear it. But I think it brings up a good point. And the same thing with, if you look at a reiteration of that with Delta, saying the Delta pilots getting $650 million of a note for termination of the pension plan. The retired pilots getting nothing out of that. And you start saying, well, should there have been representation? And I think it's going to take a legal change to do that. I really think, I feel strongly that if a union refuses to represent retirees, that the union should be prohibited from making concessions on the benefits that were earned when these people were working under a collectively bargained agreement. And to that point, I'm off the script here, but I've written a letter that Valerie's going to cover to my senators here in California, proposing that we maybe add to this Lost Retirement Savings Act, which ALPA is pushing. ALPA is pushing a bill that would allow pilots or employees of airlines who had their pension plans terminated and who received a bankruptcy claim in the bankruptcy to roll that over as an IRA rollover without taxation. That sounds like a good idea. I would like to just tag in maybe a couple of amendments there that recognizes, but let's also go back and say that if the union doesn't represent their retirees, I think that's a fitting place to put it. I'm meeting with Barbara Boxer's field representative on Monday in LA. So what we may do is want Californians to follow through on this with Feinstein and Boxer to see. There are a couple other bills going on. Barbara Boxer apparently is co-sponsor of a bankruptcy bill. I don't know all the details of that. And I think that there will be congressional hearings on the merger, which may be our best shot of handling this out of the legal arena. But there are some holes, there are things that are wrong with the laws. I mean, there's another thing that has bothered me ever since U.S. Air Bankruptcy 1, where the U.S. Air pilots lost their pension plan, and yet the managerial pension plan continued. Why is it, why should, when the management's calling the shot, going through bankruptcy, why should management be able to point to someone else and say, we'll take away your benefits and keep ours? I think before you can terminate the pension plan of one employee or group of employees, the manager should also agree to termination of their pension plan. Sounds fair to me. And I think that one would get some political momentum in Washington. I guess the bottom line is my questions about the DNS plan or the continuance of benefits out of the DNS plan. Will Delta fulfill its repeatedly stated intentions to maintain the DNS plans? Will ALPA prevent modification or termination of the DNS plan in case Delta reverses course on its repeatedly stated intentions to maintain the plan? And finally, will the DNS Trust have sufficient assets to continue to pay DNS plan benefits if Delta is forced to terminate the DNS plan as a result of a future bankruptcy? And I think those are good questions. I get many phone calls where guys say, can I rely on that survivor benefit, or do I need to buy life insurance? And all I can say is flip a coin, because I don't know. But all we can try to do is maybe fight the issue. John Erickson's been very instrumental in at least helping us come out with more favorable language out of the plan of reorganization and going forward. And then Valerie is going to be a lightning ride in Washington, as we know. I'm sure she's going to get, because Congress is predominantly male, I'm sure she's going to get a lot more attention than I will when we go to Washington.